What for you, when you were studying the whole UFO UAP phenomena, what led you to the conclusion, looking at the data that we have, that this is related to what you've been referring to as, sentient dark plasma? And
Yeah, so basically, the prevalent hypothesis is that this is an extraterrestrial phenomena. The extraterrestrial hypothesis has got many problems. First of all, the travel problems. How do you travel from one star to another? Number two is there is a ROI problem, return on investment. Why would an advanced civilization from one side of a galaxy go to another side of a galaxy to sort of stop over on a speck of dust of a civilization which is even less advanced than yours? What is your return on investment? It doesn't make sense, right? And then you look at the messaging. The messaging is, oh, don't destroy the earth and blah blah blah. I mean, why would a distant civilization come to the speck of dust, in this solar system and warn about not destroying your Earth? Doesn't make sense. I mean, got their own Earths and they've got their own planet and stars and all on the other side of the galaxy. Why they come all over to decide a galaxy to tell one small little civilization whom they won't get any benefits from, and which is totally bad example of a civilization, with all the wars and nonsense going on, right? Why would they come here and tell us that? So the messaging problem is also is problematic. Then you've got a paranormal issue. So because they say the body moves out of the bedroom and then goes to, it sort of transmits to the spacecraft. Now the question is, what body are you talking about? Are you talking about the physical body or the subtle body or the dark plasma body? So all this tells you that the extraterrestrial hypothesis is too simplistic. It doesn't work. So my hypothesis, I call it the interterrestrial hypothesis, because if Earth is nested within many different Earths, bigger and bigger Earths, right? Bigger and bigger plasma spheres, and which have their own civilization. Most of the UFOs and of the UAP and the aliens that you meet are going to be from a parent universe, which is just next door only. They don't have, first of all, they don't have to travel. There's no such thing as return on investment. There's not, because there's no cost to it. And in terms of messaging, it makes complete sense because they are worried that you are going to destroy the earth to which they are coupled to.
On this week's episode of the Epistemics podcast, we have researcher Jay Alfred. He has spent over 2 decades of his life studying dark plasma and plasma-based life forms. In this week's episode, we dive into his research and see if there are any parallels between plasma and the world of the Jinn. Jay has published many books and articles. Many of them will be linked in the description box below. Now, before we get into today's video, if you haven't already, take a moment to click the subscribe button and click the notification bell so we can carry on producing this content. So without further ado, let's get on with today's episode.
So, Jay, thank you for joining me today. Really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to do this podcast. Just to give you a bit of a context, you probably already know. I've been looking, and I've been studying the topic of the Jinn more recently for the past couple of years, and I at one point dove into the etymological study of the words that are used to describe the origins and the nature of the Jinn. And what I realized at that point was that possibly this may be referring to what we call plasma in today's day and age. And that's when I started searching this, and I came across your work, and I noticed that you had a huge body of work that you had, put out there over the past more than 2 decades. You're published on Academia Edu, other sites. You've written books. You've spent, like I said, over 2 decades of your life studying this topic, and your work is phenomenal. So what I want to do today is maybe let's get into some of your work, discuss some of those aspects relating to the Jinn, and then we can obviously maybe do something in the future and give people more resources to check out your work too. So the very first thing, I guess, if you can start us off with, the first question I have for you is, how did you get into this? What intrigued you about plasma? What interested you about plasma?
All right. So basically, I started becoming interested in plasma life forms around the year 2000. 2000. That's like a quarter of a century ago,
Mhm.
while I was working full time. And basically, what I noticed was a lot of this metaphysical literature, right? They have many signature plasma features. I mean, I don't know where people really, really, when they see these illustrations, whether plasma comes to their mind. But when I saw it, when I saw the filaments, when I saw the Chinese Taoist meridians, right? When I saw the yoga illustrations of chakras and filamentary currents. Of course, the filamentary currents, they call it the nadis, and the vortexes, right? The plasma vortexes. I see it as plasma vortexes, right? They but in the literature it is basically what they call chakras. Chakras are wheels, literally
Mhm.
translated as wheels. So while the Islamic literature has got some references like smokeless fire, which I pointed out, I think 20 years ago, that smokeless fire is really a very good description of the fourth state of matter. By the way, plasma was coined. The term plasma was coined only in 1927. So anybody looking at plasma before that wouldn't even know how to describe it. There were many clairvoyants actually at the turn of the 20th century. Especially those clairvoyants from the Theosophy movement, and particularly Leadbeater, Charles Leadbeater. He also described plasma as liquid fire that does not burn. So there are quite a number of statements made by clairvoyants, made by you know various other belief systems, and then even on in the east, but in the west, of course, you got Christianity with loads of references to plasma activity. For example, in Pentecost, right, there was all these tongues of fire coming on the heads of the apostles, and there was a
Yeah.
big fire. Before that, there was a big fire. It separated. Okay, so all this activity, I mean, when you look at it, it immediately brings to mind plasma, and also, of course, the burning bush, the transfiguration of Jesus Christ, blah blah blah. There's so many references, but it's not only the East and the West. Even the shamanic traditions. The Australian Aborigines have the rainbow serpent. The Zulus have the lightning birds. The Navajos had their lightning, their light beings. And so even the what do you call that? The Incas also had their own light beings, and they also covered meridians and chakras and things like that. Maybe not the 360 acupoints of Chinese acupuncture, or the 20 meridians of Chinese acupuncture, but they may have like three chakras or maybe a few meridians which they have identified. So I think the main takeaway looking at all this, even in 2000 and after that, I realized that definitely there is some very deep connection there between what the metaphysical literature is saying and plasma activity, you know.
Mhm.
And a
Yeah.
lot of people, they sort of, they may see the same things, but they may not come to the correct solution. What I mean by that is this: there has been in 2025, right? There was an upsurge of people talking about plasma life
Mhm.
on on YouTube, and even some academics in 2024, I think, right? They talked about thermosphere and plasma life form, life forms, and so on and so forth. Huh? I just wonder whether they are aware of what they are actually talking about. Many of these people are not experts in plasma life or just plasma physics. They are not experts, and they talk about plasma is being sentient and all, right?
Yes.
And based on maybe their observations, right? And they conclude that plasmoids are composed of ordinary plasma. Okay, and that is the main mistake that they make. Most
Right.
of
Right.
the UAPs the identified aerial phenomena, and the
Mm.
previous term for it, the UFOs, most of them are basically transient plasma phenomena. Most of them, like more
Mhm.
than 90%. Okay,
Mhm.
and if you want to stretch your imagination, right, you may think of some protoplasma life forms as ordinary plasma life forms. There are actual experiments that show that this can happen. I don't know whether you've heard of the Losnenio Sandoloviciu experiments in 2003.
No, no, I haven't. No.
Okay, so they did
Please
an
tell me, please.
experiment. They did an experiment where they showed, that plasma can actually form into plasma spheres. And these plasma spheres can actually so-called absorb energy from the laboratory or absorb charged particles, become bigger and replicate. And after they replicated, they could communicate through electromagnetic waves because they
Wow.
are charged particles. So they are driven by electromagnetic waves,
Mhm,
and they had a kind of metabolic activity. So in the sense that they were, absorbing charged particles.
mhm, mhm.
So in that experiment, which is a very famous experiment, everybody knows about it, and I wrote about it, just a few years after they did the experiment. And over there, they claim that this is plasma life, lah. Huh? This is plasma life. So my view is that it had a lot of the features of proto life. Proto life is like a virus, just before becoming life. I mean, a virus is neither life nor not life, right? So I call it proto life. So Los Niño, the famous experiment, showed that in principle, plasma could actually form plasma spheres that can sort of metabolize, replicate, and communicate.
Mhm.
You see?
Very interesting.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, when people say, oh, they look at the sky and then they say, oh, this is a plasma life, they are making two mistakes. First of all, when Los Niño did it, he did it in a laboratory, right? And he actually ran an electric current from one electrode to another electrode,
Mhm.
and a spark flew. And that spark created a sphere. It was a very controlled environment.
Yeah.
The moment you the moment you go out of the laboratory, the spheres actually just basically disappear. In fact,
Mhm,
even the experiment itself, when plasma physics or physicists talk about plasma being very long-lived, their mindset is very different from ordinary people. Okay,
mhm,
when they say long, even a 3 seconds is very long in plasma. In like for example, fusion, right? The
mhm,
fusion experiments use plasma, right? So in the fusion experiments, even a few seconds is like an eternity. So when they say it's long-lived, it is not in the same meaning or same sense as what an ordinary person might think of long-lived. So that's another thing that a lot of these people who talk about ordinary plasma life are also mistaken. When they hear long lived in the, when people are saying that plasma can form coherent structures and which are long lived, right?
mhm.
They are misinterpreting the context. The
Right.
context in which the plasma physicists are talking is few seconds, microseconds.
Mhm. Got it.
So
So,
and then they conclude is plasma life, which is wrong because they're talking in their minds they're talking about ordinary plasma life. Ordinary plasma, there is no ordinary plasma on the surface of the earth. There
mhm,
are artificial ones like neon tubes and fluorescent lamps, right? But there are no natural plasma formation. And the reason is very simple. The recombination rate is very fast. Why? Because electromagnetism is 10 to the power of 39 times stronger than
mhm,
gravity. That's very, very, it is one of the strongest forces apart from the strong force. Huh? So it's a very, very strong force. And you can actually calculate the recombination rate of a proton and electron. It is 10 minus 7 seconds. If you want to imagine what 10 minus 7 seconds is, imagine a blink of an eye, okay, and make it 10,000 times faster.
mhm.
So
That's
basically,
very
it's
fast.
invisible to you. So it's basically invisible. It's straight away. The moment you crack open the fluorescent lamp or the neon tube, straight away the plasma disappears.
Mhm, mhm. So what you're
So
saying is that for
yeah,
plasma to uh, remain within our environment, within our physical world, it requires a certain external environment within which it has to be a controlled environment within which it
yes,
exists.
yes,
Otherwise, it just dissipates very quickly.
that's right. That's right. So a lot of these people, even so-called experts, they are
Mhm,
not familiar with plasma life or plasmoids, but what they see is that plasmoids behaving like living creatures, and they get a mistaken view that it is life. And the reason is very simple. These are charged particles. If
mhm,
you are in a plane which is negatively charged, and in front of you there's a negatively charged particle, what's going to happen to the negatively charged particles? It will be running away from you
mhm,
because it's electrical repulsion.
mhm, mhm. Got you.
So
Yeah.
it looks as though it's running away from you. So, and then the second case is if you are in a negatively charged aeroplane, okay, and there's a positively charged particle behind you, that positively charged particle is going to rush and it's going to be rushing towards the plane, and
Yeah.
you'll be thinking, oh, this whatever this is, this light seems to have some cognizance,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
this has been pointed out many, many times that the charge, you have to understand these are charged particles you're talking about. So don't mistake them as plasma light. So the first step is not to mistake all these things for plasma light. When I say plasma light, I mean it's very specific form of plasma light,
Mhm.
not this plasma phenomena lah.
Yes. Yeah. So we're gonna get into that, Jay. So that's very interesting, and I like the fact how nuanced you are with this. That not all forms of plasma, potential plasma that are seen, are alive, right? It may just be a function of the physics, like you described, if it's charged or negatively or positively charged, and therefore it moves towards or moves away, and then it may seem like or be interpreted as, oh, it's sentient in some way, but
That's
it may not be. So
Hmm.
and I think this is where your distinction comes in with dark plasma, as you
That's right.
talk about, and we're gonna
Mm.
get into that. But before we go there, just I'm not a physicist, so I'm assuming most of the people watching this video right now are not going to be familiar. So there's going to be a knowledge gap that I want you to fill for us. Can you take a few moments to describe or explain what plasma is to begin with before we make those distinctions?
Sure. So basically, solids, liquids, and gases are the three states of matter that we are most familiar with. What are they made of? They are made of atoms and molecules. What's an atom made of? Okay, you've got your neutrons in the nucleus, you've got the protons in the nucleus, you've got electrons circling around around the nucleus. Now, if you take a matter made of atoms, okay, atomic matter, let's call it, and you start heating it. Okay, let's take argon gas, okay, which is made of atoms, argon atoms, right? And you start heating them up. What's going to happen? You're going to give a lot of kinetic energy to the particles within the atom, and they're going to start to struggle and push and everything. And at a certain temperature, maybe about thousands of degrees, 10,000 degrees centigrade, okay, the electron is going to escape from the atom. Okay, when the electron escapes from the atom, you get charge separation, which is the electrons are negatively charged. The proton in the nucleus is positively charged. So you actually have a soup of charged particles. So imagine argon, right, in a room, right, and you are heating it up to 10,000 degrees, and all these electrons is separate, okay, from the atoms. So there are soups of electrons and protons, and all these electrons and the protons, right, they, because of the heat, they cannot get together. That means, in other words, the temperature overrides the electrical charge, the power of the electrical charge to attract them. So this is called plasma. One of the main characteristics of plasma. So then the next question is, what's the difference between plasma and gas? Gas also is sometimes it's all particles, just separate particles like that, right? Gases are normally made of atoms, okay? Basically atoms or molecules, right? And they're separated. So they are not actually the elementary particles, first of all, okay? Secondly, plasma, the particles actually do not physically collide most of the time. If they physically collide most of the time, it is not considered plasma, it is considered a gas. So it is not physical collisions. The collision rate is very, very low, right? So the what do you call it? The most of the interactions are called Coulomb interactions, which is basically electromagnetism, right? The when a particle has electric charge, right, the field actually can extend to quite a distance. So the particles are all interacting with each other, not through physical collisions. Okay, they are actually interacting because of the electrical potentials between them. So that's called a plasma. If the collision rate becomes more and more, it turns into a gas already.
Mhm.
Okay. Secondly, there has to be a significant number of particles in the soup lah. You can't have like one or two particles, then you call it plasma. It cannot be, right? Yeah. a kind of a soup, a big soup of all these particles, all
Mhm.
interacting through the electromagnetic forces. And because of this, it can become very, very complicated because of instabilities. As what I mentioned, the electromagnetic force is very strong, so it can lead to instabilities. The third condition of being a plasma relates to what we call a Debye length. A Debye length is the length between the proton and electron, right?
Mhm.
Which is more than the length of the proton electron. It is the length. It is the it's a bit tricky though to try to understand this. But what it means is that you are not within. That means when you are observing, you're doing the experiment, right? You are not within that length. In other words, you cannot feel. You won't be able to feel the separate positive charge and the negative charge.
Mhm.
So one of the conditions of a plasma is that the plasma has to be bigger than the length of the proton to the electron. That means it has to be bigger than the Debye length. Because the third criteria of plasma is that it has to be neutral, or more specifically, technically speaking, it has to be quasi-neutral. The reason why they cannot use the word, but generally speaking, in principle, okay, you remember plasma, it does not physically collide. The particles do not physically collide. Okay, uh, there has to be many particles. Okay, and then it has to be overall neutral. If it's not neutral, it is it is it can be considered a non-neutral plasma. But generally speaking, when we talk of plasma, it's called neutral plasma. But the word that they use is not neutral. The word that they use is quasi-neutral. The reason is because it's like the plasma, the particles are all jumping around. So
Mhm.
it is like a seesaw. Sometimes they are negative, sometimes they are positive, sometimes they are negative. So it's called quasi-neutral.
Mhm. Okay.
So because of this seesawing, right, you have a lot of phenomena that you do not have in solids or liquids, and that's what makes plasma so complicated.
Mhm. Okay. So and just a additional question to that: are there different types of plasma? And what I mean by that is, uh, do they give so some plasma you can see, even if it's within lab conditions, you could see that the glow. So they're giving off, I assume, photons to some degree. Are there other forms which are completely invisible?
Okay, so plasma, unlike solids and liquids and gases, spontaneously emit photons.
Okay.
That's a great thing about plasma. It spontaneously emits photons, and if it's ordinary plasma, we can see it provided the energy level is high enough. If you bring down the energy level lower and lower and lower, of course you know the and if it's further and further and further away, you won't be able to see it. So distance and the energy levels will determine whether ordinary plasma is visible or invisible.
Got you.
So
Okay.
some people, when I say dark plasma, they they mistake it for ordinary plasma, which is dark. Because in space, right? In space,
Mhm.
there are a lot of bodies which are dark. You can't see it. Yeah,
Mhm.
our eyes can't see it, but our telescopes can easily see it because they are in
Yes.
the infrared or in the ultraviolet. We
Mhm.
can't see it, but our telescopes can see it.
Yeah.
So okay, so we got the first level is ordinary plasma, which is visible by the human eyes. Number two, it is invisible, but is visible to our telescopes and our satellites and observatories. Now we come to the third one, which is the real dark plasma, which is dark plasma not made of ordinary matter particles, but made of dark matter particles. Dark matter
Right.
particles, they do not radiate ordinary electromagnetism. So not only our eyes, but even our telescopes cannot see it. Even our, you know, uh, so-called detectors, right? Cannot or satellites cannot see it. So the third one is dark matter. So what is dark matter, right? So the next question is what I mean, what is dark? Where did this come from, and so on and so forth. So the term dark matter was coined in 1933, but by Fritz Zwicky. So he actually noticed that the stars that were going around the some of the galaxies, right? They were going around much faster, okay, than what Newton predicted in terms of the Newtonian laws. Okay, So he concluded there must be matter there, but I can't see it. Okay, but at that time nobody paid attention to him because he was a funny character. He's a very antisocial character. So nobody really listened to him. So it's strange that even in science, right? These things matter now,
Yeah.
whether you're sociable or not sociable and things like that. But anyway, like 30s, so about 40 years after that, a scientist called Vera Rubin, she noticed the same thing, but she recorded it meticulously and she reported it. And it's only in the 1970s that dark matter was taken seriously by the physics community. Okay, only around 1970s. Then they started sending out satellites and so on and so forth, and also multi-million-dollar installations all over the earth now, right? In Antarctica, okay, in Italy, underground, in satellites. We have various installations trying to detect dark matter. Now, so there has been some attempts to sort of try to quantify how much of dark matter there is in the universe. Okay,
Mm.
the latest measurement was made by the Planck satellite uh, 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 with the ESA, like the European Space Agency's satellite called Planck satellite. So what the calculation suggests is 85% of all matter is dark matter. 85% of all matter is dark matter. So dark matter is theorized to be matter, okay, which has mass, okay, and which are probably made of particles, but they do not emit ordinary electromagnetism. So how do we know it is there? Because of the gravity, because mass is gravity, right? So how do we see dark matter? I mean, we can actually see in a way dark matter by using gravitational telescopes. In other words, under Einstein's theory, right? If you have a big massive object in space, it's going to bend space-time, just like a lens bending the light, you know,
Yeah.
bending light, a convex lens can bend light going through it. So in the same way, the space-time is bent by mass. Okay, so when you look at the mass, the astrophysical body which is being, which is bending the space-time, what you will see also is not is not just bending space-time, like it's bending all the light coming from the stars and the galaxies behind it.
Yeah.
So you can see all the circular arcs around the, you know, around astrophysical objects. And what is most surprising is sometimes there's not even a star or galaxy in front of you. There's nothing in front of you, but you see the circular things. What that means is there's matter that you cannot even see, which is massive. Okay, so now they've come. It is also established, because of so many observations, that the number of dark galaxies, and it's invisible galaxies and invisible stars actually outnumber visible galaxies in the universe by 100 to 1. There are 100 invisible galaxies for every one visible galaxy.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
When
fine.
I
So,
say yeah,
just to ask, just so it's clear in my mind. So essentially, are you saying that one of the separating factors between matter and dark matter is to do with the electromagnetic fields that they produce, or how would you sort of say that?
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So the electromagnetism, uh, i- dark matter, generally speaking, for the first, like since 1970s, since Vera Rubin first identified dark matter, until about 2010, right? About 20, okay, let's say 2008 or before that. If you include my book, it will be 2005 lah, because I said the same things that scientists said a few years later. But basically, most people since Vera Rubin's time thought that dark matter does not have electromagnetism at all. It is
Mhm.
just inert. They call it collisionless dark matter. It's just
Mhm.
individual particles just moving around and forming halos around galaxies. But since 2008, since Sean Carroll's paper, Sean Carroll, Lottie Ackerman paper, which was 3 years after I wrote about it, uh, from Caltech, right? He suggested a thing called dark electromagnetism.
Mhm.
Okay, so dark electromagnetism as opposed to ordinary electromagnetism. So this idea now has been repeated by Lisa Randall in 2013. Okay, has been repeated by A.V. Loeb, has been written by Matty H, and so many, 19 Chukla, and so on and so forth. So there are tens of physicists now, okay, uh, uh, who accept the idea that there is a component of dark matter. That means it's not all the dark matter. There's about 15% of dark matter out of the 85%, right?
Right.
There's 15% is what we call self-interacting dark matter. So to answer the question, this self-interacting dark matter has an electromagnetism called dark electromagnetism as opposed to the ordinary electromagnetism. So
Right.
this dark electromagnetism is the one that distinguishes dark plasma from ordinary plasma. Why? Because all the theoretical models suggest that the strength of this dark electromagnetism is weaker than the ordinary electromagnetism. So what did I say just now? I said that for ordinary electromagnetism, the recombination rate is very fast, 10 minus 7 seconds. Why? Because of the strength of the charge. Now imagine weaken the charge. The recombination rate is going to be very slow.
Right.
So that allows for charge separation, which is the fundamental criteria for life, actually,
Mhm. Very
right?
interesting.
And not only that, dark matter is lower density than ordinary matter. That means the
Mhm.
particles are further apart. Again, the recombination rate is going to be very slow.
Mhm.
So because of this, when I talk about plasma life, I'm talking about mainly about dark plasma life, because this is where complex life, we have the criteria for complex life.
Mhm. Mhm. So in other words, what you're saying is because the recombination rate is slower, much slower, that this dark plasma can exist for far longer than normal plasma, which dissipates very quickly.
That's right. So
Right. And
we're talking about 10 minus 7 seconds, and
Mhm.
and these dark plasma structures, which can last for, I mean, a lifetime, because the whole environment is dark plasma. It is not only the life form which is dark plasma.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yes.
the environment has a lower electric charge.
Mhm. Mhm. Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. And how? So that's one clear differentiation between dark plasma and normal plasma. What other things would you say make them different from one another?
So basically, when we talk about ordinary plasma, right? Uh, the combination rate is going to be very fast, and it will, some, you know, like just now, what I mentioned was when Leadbeater, the clairvoyant, when he was describing this
Mm.
plasma, but he did not call it plasma, he called it a liquid fire that does not burn. Okay,
Right.
how can a fire not burn?
Mhm.
That's another distinction between ordinary plasma and dark plasma. Because dark plasma dark matter particles do not interact with ordinary matter particles. You can be surrounded by a halo of dark plasma, but it doesn't burn you. And
Mhm.
why is it liquid? Because plasma is the macroscopic properties of plasma are generally described by MHD, magnetohydrodynamics. Notice the word hydrodynamics here. That means it acts like a fluid. It acts like a liquid.
Got you.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are many similarities between ordinary plasma and dark plasma because they are both plasma, right?
Mhm.
But these are some of the differences that help you explain how, when we talk about in the metaphysical literature, I talk about angels or jinns or, you
Mhm.
know, subtle bodies. In the East, you got the concept of subtle bodies. When you talk about these, why do they not burn you? Why can't you see them?
Mhm.
How come they don't interact with us? Why is it that only clairvoyants can see it, but I can't see it?
Uh-huh.
All these questions are answered.
Yeah, it has a lot more explanatory power and depth when it comes to explaining what people have been witnessing throughout the centuries of these entities. So, and just one more question about plasma before we move on to these life forms and get into that. It's well, at least from some of if you look at the sphere of ufology and the phenomena and what's been going on currently, there are some claims that there is radiation effects from this phenomena. Now, is there a link between normal plasma and radiation, or giving off radiation in certain states or at certain times, and dark plasma? So how do you bring that point in about radiation to both plasma and dark plasma?
That's very which you asked, but the people who are talking about it did not ask.
Mhm.
Do you realize that a lot of people talk about it, but they don't really ask questions
Yeah.
about, how to connect it to science? So you are doing the connecting with science pretty well. So the thing is this: in around 28 or 2007, I got this idea about what I call dark ionization process. Okay,
Mm.
but it is nothing exotic. It is a accepted way of interaction within a plasma, and generally called collisional ionization. Okay, when when the particles hit an atom, right, and hit the electron, and the electron flies out, or the nucleus recoils, right,
Mm.
it's gonna push the electron up. When the electron comes back to the atom, it will release energy and radiation and heat and electricity. Okay,
Right.
so how does this thing happen? So a lot of the dark matter detectors that we have, how do they work? They are basically waiting for a dark matter particle to come into the laboratory, okay, and collide with the ordinary matter particle. When the dark matter particle collides with the ordinary particle, it will nudge the atom, the electron out of the atom. Electron recoil, or it could be the nucleus recoiling and coming back. And when it comes back, because it goes out, right, and it comes back to another energy level, right? So the differences in energy, it will radiate out. Okay,
Mhm.
this is how
Mhm.
multi-million dollar installations around the world are actually trying to detect dark matter. And this is called collisional ionization, one form of interaction, one form of indirect interaction. Okay,
Right.
so even if they find this collisional ionization occurring, and they conclude there's dark matter, remember, they are not actually seeing the dark matter particle.
Sure.
They're only
Yeah.
seeing the indirect effects of the dark matter
Correct. Yes.
particle, ordinary matter particle. So
Mhm.
imagine a Jinn. Let's say, since I'm talking to you and you are interested in that, if plasma life forms are known to move very fast for various reasons, which I've actually explained in a lot of details in terms of the physics and all. There's a paper on academia.edu called The Biophysics of Plasma Life Forms. Okay, they have different propulsion systems, and they also use uh, you can call it an electrical grid around the Earth to move. And when they move very, very fast. It can be 3 minutes around the Earth.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
so if you have had, or if your friends had any experience with these plasma life forms, you will know, because you can actually hear things being hit, and it's very fast. You can actually feel the whoosh,
Mhm.
sort of like when they're moving very fast against you. So they actually move very fast. Now, what is the implication of this? If they are moving very fast, the dark matter particles that make up their body are going to hit the ordinary matter particles in our atmosphere. Okay, and that is going to cause collisional ionization. Okay, which hits our ordinary matter electrons out of the atoms, and when they come back, they're going to radiate. They're going to
Wow.
generate radiation.
So, Jay, are you saying, so if I'm understanding you correctly, are we also saying that, say, for example, when this dark plasma, well, there's an assumption here which we can go into, and you can explain this to me. But if this dark plasma, it's when it's interacting with normal matter, and could that happen when say, if the plasma is shifting from a certain state to a more visible state? Because say, these entities throughout history have been known to materialize or shapeshift or take on forms that we can see at times. if that
Sure.
process is going on, and I do want to get your thoughts on that process itself. How does, a plasma state go into more of a physical state, if that's what's happening when they become visible or take on a
Yeah,
form? Could that shift or that transition itself be throwing off this type of ionization and this radiation because of that shift itself? Because energy has to go somewhere, right?
exactly. So the other thing is, besides moving, actually, I wrote very, very detailed descriptions of this in the papers, in
Mhm.
various papers.
We're
So
going to share
it's
them in
it's
the description box as well for everyone to read afterwards.
so it's all on academia.edu under my
Mhm.
name, Jay Alfred. So yeah, exactly. So you see, the other way that collisional ionization can occur besides moving very fast is density modulations. You see, just now I already mentioned that the density of dark matter, right, is much lower than ordinary matter. What are the implications of this? The implications of this is that it has a lot of capacity to contract and expand. So when it contracts, the density is going to go up. When it expands, the density is going to go down. So these are called density modulation. Now, when you modulate the density, what's going to happen? The dark matter particles are moving up and down. They're going to hit the ordinary matter particles and they're going to cause collisional ionization. And
Wow.
because of that, they appear. But when they appear, you're not seeing the actual life form. Only a clairvoyant may see it, but you
Mhm.
can't see it. What you see is the ordinary plasma, which is being generated by the dark plasma. Dark
Right.
plasma's collision with the ordinary matter particles. So this is an indirect way of
So
seeing. Yeah.
are you saying when dark plasma interacts or collides with normal matter, it produces normal plasma, or can?
Don't say interact. Don't because interaction in this particular case, what we're talking about is a bit subtle. But I don't want to go into detail because it may confuse certain people.
Yes. Yeah.
But basically, okay, let's say let's just make it simplistic and say, oh yeah, it collides. Okay, so what I'm saying is the dark matter particle, when it collides with the atoms, right, in our atmosphere, right, it's gonna kick out the electron. When the electron returns to the atom, it's gonna release energy and radiation. And it can
Mhm.
do this this happens in many different situations. One situation is when it's moving very fast.
Uh,
Another situation is when it changes its density up and
right.
down.
Right.
Right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Carry on. Sorry. Carry on. There's
No,
loads of
no.
questions that coming to my mind. This is fascinating
Yeah.
stuff.
So you're talking
Um.
about you were talking about shifting, right? Shape shifting
Yeah.
has got the same explanation. If the density is very low, you have a lot of capacity to change shape.
Hmm.
So plasma life forms are like amoeba, no? Amoeba have got pseudopods. That means they got arms, which can
Hmm.
which can appear suddenly. They can just push out some material from their cell, right? And that's an extension of the amoeba. It's called a pseudopod. It's pseudo because the hand can appear and disappear, appear and disappear. You know, so they can shape shift easily. I mean, so once you know this, I mean, it's like all these are natural properties of dark plasma. These are natural properties of plasma. So there's nothing much to like try to hand wave and say, oh yeah, because of this technology and that. Nothing. It's all natural. You know, and so it gives out radiation. It can it can size shift because it can contract and expand. It
Hmm.
can shape shift also, right? It spontaneously emits dark photons, which you can't see, but clairvoyants can see, and which other people can indirectly see if they collide with ordinary matter electrons. And there's another thing called kinetic mixing. There's another physical process called kinetic mixing where the dark photon can actually convert to ordinary photon in certain conditions. You
Right.
know, the dark photon, there's a certain probability of the dark photon converting into ordinary photons.
Very interesting. So Jay, I want to share with you. I'm going to send you this video clip after this call. 2 days ago, one of my friends, his motion detector was set off in his back garden, and when he looked at the clip that was recorded, and it was recorded in infrared, because he has infrared cameras, you see this form which is very translucent, and then it becomes very dense, and it just looks like bright white light, and it has a little shape to it, and it moves within 3 frames. Now, I think it was recorded within 25 frames per second, and it covers like a distance of maybe 15 meters, 10, 15 meters in just 3 frames, and it just disappears.
Sure. As what I
So
was saying, they move very fast.
yes, yes, and yeah, and I ran it through AI, and apparently it's probably moving somewhere between 250 and 350 miles per hour, something like that, roughly. But what I want to ask you, when this dark plasma is, again, layman terms, interacting or going through normal matter, and it therefore somehow manifests, can it trigger? Does it have some sort of density to trigger like a motion detector? Could that happen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so now I have to move on to the third type of interaction, which is interaction mediated by a hypothetical fifth force. We've got 4 forces, right? Gravity, strong force, weak force, electromagnetism. There's also since 2016 there has been a particle which a lot of physicists also think that it could actually mediate a fundamental fifth force. And this fundamental fifth force, I mean, there's been many experiments on this, so it's not totally hypothetical. There's many kind of experiments, which some of the experiments actually confirm the existence of this particle. But whether this is the final particle that we will land up with in terms of fifth force, or there could be other particles, the experiments are still going on. And astrophysical observations also tell us, because of the behavior of dark matter, right, they also suggest there's some fifth force which we have not identified yet. So what do I mean by fifth force? This fifth force is actually a portal. It's actually a portal between dark matter and ordinary matter. So if these particles mediate a fifth force, what that means is that when this so-called dark matter life form, right, comes into ordinary matter environment, some of the ordinary matter particles are going to stick to it.
Right.
Okay, so this can actually, when it moves very fast, you can actually hear, because they've got a veneer of ordinary matter particles around their body, because the fifth fundamental force actually attracts and sticks that onto the dark plasma body. So you can't actually see the dark plasma life form, but you can see a kind of a cloak around it. And when it moves, if it hits something, you're going to hear a thud, And all this actually is not only relating to what your experiences are. I mean, all the UFO, UAP, there's so much of phenomena there, thousands of pages. All also, there's many interviews that they've conducted, and many of them say, yeah, you can hear the noises, the loud noises, and things like that. Yeah.
Yep. Popping sounds, like a buzzing sound, a popping sound. Sometimes they see flashes of light just before they have the sighting. I don't know what that may mean, the flashing of light just before.
So all this is very easily explained through dark plasma physics. But I want to have a word of caution also, because 90% of these are actually not plasma life form, because it's generally quite rare. The most common one would be ordinary light phenomena and electromagnetic phenomena. So you have to ask a scientist whether, first of all, is it an electromagnetic phenomena? Most of them will say yes. I mean, and they can even explain to you why it is. But in rare circumstances, which I myself experienced this, but in rare circumstances, right, there is reason to believe that this is something more than ordinary electromagnetism. There's something behind it, because one event is related to another event is related to another event. So it's not in isolation, So but this, I have to have a word of, give a word of caution, because these are supposed to be quite rare. See? Yeah.
Yes. So Jay, okay, now we're going to sort of transition into a more of a metaphysical / scientific discussion. But what you've described is fascinating, and that's led me to several other questions, which I'm going to hopefully try to ask you as we go along. Now, obviously, if we bring into this sort of discussion some metaphysics here, and specifically from the perspective of the Jinn, we assuming that the Jinn are sentient forms of dark plasma, let's just say, for our model to discuss this. let me start off by giving you a sort of description of from my research, what I found, and tell me if this makes sense from your research as well, or how you understand this and interpret this. So there's three key words that are used in the Quran in the Arabic language. When you do an etymological study, when you go to the classical dictionaries, you get a whole list of different meanings of each word. So the three words are marriage, samum, and jinn itself, the Arabic word itself. So the word marriage, when you look at the lexicons and the dictionaries, it highlights something that's volatile, something that's a mixed substance, something that's shifting and energetic, something. And one of the descriptions the linguists give is, if you have a pasture, like a field, and there's loads of animals there, but there's no shepherd. So they're moving around just in their own way randomly and, changing places, and there's no control. So it's uncontrolled. The word samum also highlights a piercing nature, something that pierces, something that cuts, something, again, that's very energetic. The word jinn, as you know already, means something invisible or unseen. Now, if you bring all of these descriptions together, would I be accurate in saying that this is very close to what we call plasma or dark plasma in modern scientific language?
Yeah, definitely. But it could be in ordinary, because as what I say, plasma is plasma. I mean, ordinary plasma and dark plasma have got many similarities as well.
Yes,
So
they do. Yes, like you
it
said.
could
Yeah,
also be ordinary.
yeah,
So
yeah.
only way to sort of split them apart. I mean, one of the ways of split them are, if you have a clairvoyant, she can see actually the dark component and the ordinary component. She'll be able to see it. Yeah.
Okay, Jay. So here's the question now. So let's start with this, I guess. So when it comes to the jinn, there's a lot of texts that highlight that the jinn can take on different forms. We've touched upon this briefly, but they can manifest in the form of humans, animals, other cryptid or strange creatures. They can, take on other inanimate forms sometimes as well. Now, I want to get the physics side of it and how this may work hypothetically. How can a dark plasma entity, or a plasma entity for that matter, what's the physics of going from a plasma state to a visible state? Now, my thinking, and I may be completely wrong, there may be two things happening here. One is that that this sentient plasma form has control over the electromagnetic spectrum to a degree where it can manipulate it and therefore shift from a plasma state to a physical state atomically, and also from a light spectrum perspective as well. It can go from, say, the infrared or the ultraviolet, whatever the case is, to a visible light spectrum. Is that what may be going on, or do you think it's just...
No, first of all, don't mix up ordinary electromagnetism with the dark electromagnetism, but it's very easily explained. It can be very easily explained. In fact, I explained it in 2007. I've already explained. It's in my books and in the papers I wrote. With respect to this question, it's actually the paper on biophysics of plasma life forms. Now, okay, so basically, it boils down to holograms. Okay, holograms. You've got exogenic holograms and you've got endogenic. That means things that are projected out of the body, and things that are projected in the environment. Okay, so what are plasma life forms? Plasma life forms are basically electromagnetic entities. Okay, not biochemical bodies are different from electromagnetic entities. Electromagnetic entities naturally absorb and transmit or radiate electromagnetic waves. Right? Now, an electromagnetic entity which has thoughts, when it radiates electromagnetic waves, those electromagnetic waves are going to be modulated by the thoughts. So if you have a dark plasma body around you, while you're thinking, your dark plasma body is going to radiate electromagnetic waves, to the environment. And what environment are we talking about? We're talking about the dark plasma environment, which is already, plasma is everywhere. Okay. So when you radiate your thoughts and then you modulate the electromagnetic, when here we are talking about dark electromagnetic waves, because biochemical bodies don't radiate dark electromagnetic waves. They don't, they radiate some ordinary electromagnetism, but it's only about like 1 meter to 2 meters. So imagine the dark plasma entity radiating out. Then your friend, who's also with you, and 1,000 people behind you are all radiating these thoughts,
Mhm.
right? When
Yeah.
you radiate these thoughts and a dark plasma life form comes in front of you, all those radiation from your dark plasma bodies to the dark electromagnetic waves are going to interact with the with the dark plasma life form.
Mhm. Mhm. Very
And what
interesting.
the dark plasma life form itself is transmitting. So when the dark plasma life forms thought waves, right, constructively interfere, and all your 1,000 friends, all the electromagnetic waves, right, if they destructively interfere, there's nothing happens. But if they constructively interfere, you will have a hologram. A hologram of what? A hologram of what all everybody is thinking about. If you're thinking about a big dinosaur, a big snake, or an angel, that
Mhm.
is exactly what you're going to see.
Wow. Okay. It's very
Right?
interesting. It's very
That's
interesting.
constructive interference. So
So, so are,
I've
are you
outlined
saying?
many different types of holograms.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So are you saying that that human thoughts can impact the manifestation these plasma entities may take? That's essentially what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah. So everybody watches TV, they watch a particular UFO episode, and then they
Yep.
look at the sky, and there's a hologram, and all the thought waves are going to converge because they're all looking at the same thing, they're concentrating, and all are going to converge into the same hologram. The hologram is going to pick up, you know, those waves, and it's going to construct a hologram of what you think it is.
Wow. And that explains also these various different manifestations of these entities in different cultures and different traditions. It's always in line with the current zeitgeist, the current thinking of the people and the culture. In certain parts of the world, it'll be Bigfoot. In other parts, it'll be werewolves. In other parts, it'll be
That's right.
in the Western world, predominantly because of our techno-secular minds and the way they have been shaped by our upgrowing and upbringing. We're seeing now technological manifestations in some sense.
Exactly.
That's a
Yeah.
very
So
very coherent way of looking at it. Yeah.
good. That's an exogenic hologram. That means the hologram appears
Hmm.
outside the body of the actual plasma life form. Okay,
Right. Right.
but they're
Okay.
also endogenous. That means the hologram is actually coming from inside the body. The body itself can shape shift, side shift, right? So
Hmm.
it's not surprising whether it appears as an angel or a human or an animal, or a horse or whatever. So
Yeah.
to answer a question, how come they are looking differently? Now these plasma life forms have got this concentric shells around them, and all these concentric shells are actually radiating light also. So the moment they change the light formations, you see different things. But there's another type of hologram, which is a endogenous hologram, which is actually generated through their bodies. Okay, as what I said, we have the meridians, the Chinese meridians. Now you got the 20 meridians, the major ones, and then so many minor meridians, and so on and so forth. When the meridians cross each other, right? The two meridians, when they cross each other, the point at which they cross is going to have a higher density of plasma, and it's got and that will form what a plasmoid is. It's going to form a plasmoid, and
Hmm.
this plasmoid is is going to because of the motion of the particles, right? The particles may be going up here or down here, or maybe both are going up, but they are moving in different directions. So what is going to happen is they're going to generate a torque, a sort of a radial force around the plasmoid. Okay, there are different types of plasmoid. You got a spheroidal plasmoid, got a toroidal plasmoid, got helicoidal plasmoids, and so on and so forth. But here we're talking about simple spheroidal plasmoid because of the different directions of the charged particles in the meridians, right? It's going to rotate the plasmoid.
Hmm.
And as it rotates, it becomes what yoga calls chakras. They are basically plasma vortexes.
Hmm.
Okay? When these vortexes, when they circulate, right, when they rotate very fast, right, these these plasmoids actually generate magnetic fields also. Okay, very intense magnetic fields. So when they rotate, they're going to twist the magnetic field. when they twist the magnetic field, they're going to store magnetic tension, and they can release the tension. When they release the tension, they can shoot out a beam of light, you know. And this beam of light can be used for many different purposes, for defensive purpose, for healing purposes, and also to create a hologram. They can also create hologram from this beam of light, you know. Yeah, so
So,
that's another way. Yeah.
so Jay, just on that holographic interpretation, how do we then explain the physical manifestations of the type where people say they can, touch or feel these things? Like, for example, I don't know if you've heard of the skull experiment, which took place in the UK many decades ago. And they were doing seances, and over time, these entities started to communicate with them, and they started to manifest in some way. So they were manifesting small UFOs in the air, in the room itself, and at times, bodies, but they weren't full bodies. They weren't full bodies. They were like parts of bodies, and they could touch those parts, and they felt very real. How is there an explanation for that?
Okay, first of all, I don't endorse any like cases that people bring up. I mean, basically just bring up them because I do not know what the actual detailed circumstances are, because one small fact can change the whole interpretation.
Mhm.
But if we want to interpret it from the dark plasma context, it's very easy to explain. I already explained the fifth fundamental force. The fifth fundamental force actually provides a veneer of ordinary matter particles around the dark plasma objects. Okay, so in very controlled circumstances, right, you could have a veneer of ordinary matter particles around the dark matter objects, so you can actually touch them. You can actually touch them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And it'll feel
And
like physical.
yeah,
It'll feel like you're touching something physical.
yes. So it will feel physical. It can even produce a thud when it drops on the ground, right?
Mhm.
It can create a noise. It can even generate magnetic waves that can cause like metallic taste in the mouth. It can generate microwaves that go through bone conduction in your skull and produce sounds in your ears, which nobody else can hear. It can even produce voices, but nobody else can hear
Wow.
except you, because it goes through bone conduction. You know, nowadays you even have earphones which work through bone conduction.
Yeah, and it vibrates
Yeah.
the bone. Yeah, very interesting. So that brings me to the next question, which is obviously amongst the jinn, there is this idea of, or in the Islamic tradition, of waswas, which is these whisperings that they whisper into the minds of people, thoughts into their minds, normally camouflaged in their own voice. But I guess essentially the main mode of interacting with humans is through this telepathic channel, which is they can communicate through thought. We spoke about thought a little while ago, how thought itself can shape these manifestations. Is there an inverse relationship as well, where these entities can inject ideas or thoughts into human minds?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so far we've been talking about standalone plasma life forms. That means there's a plasma life form there, and I'm an ordinary matter life form.
Mm.
But plasma life forms, according to my conception, okay. So I don't just talk about plasma life forms. I talk about the environment, how the environment was actually created, and how these life forms were actually evolved within that environment. Okay, so the reasoning is this. Basically, I believe in a multiverse. I believe that this universe, I mean, I'll go step by. I can. I mean, I can remember your question, but I have to go step by step because there's a whole, background to this. But okay, so step one, there is a multiverse. Okay, and in this multiverse, there are nested universes, and we are in the smallest universe in this multiverse. And our parent universe is bigger than us, and we are nested inside our parent universe. Most of these life forms, these jinns, or other UFOs and UAPs, Marian apparitions, even come generally from this parent universe. If they came from very much higher energy universes, probably we can't even interact with them, because the energy levels are so disparate. Okay, so they are actually our partner universe. They actually are the mirror universe of this one. I call it Alpha 1. Our universe is alpha 2. So, our universe interpenetrates, alpha 1 interpenetrates alpha 2. So all these life forms, they see, I mean, if they do see us, they see us as ghosts. Just like we see them as ghosts, they see us as ghosts. But actually, it's not ghosts. It's a totally, I mean, a legitimate life form, energetic life form. Now, the thing is this: in the East, right? In the East, Hinduism, Buddhism, and many shamanic religions and all, even the Egyptians, right? They believe in subtle bodies. That means bodies that are just like the universes are nested.
Mhm.
There's a nest of subtle bodies. That means you are inside another subtle body, and that subtle body is inside another body. And if you read yoga literature, these bodies have got meridians, have got vortexes, blah blah blah. So it's logical, reasonable to conclude that they are plasma bodies. So besides jinns appearing, in the environment, okay, if you want to expand the definition of a jinn to a plasma life form, in a sense, you are, I don't know whether to say this now because maybe sensitive to certain people, but you are a homo jinn. You are a homo sapien and a jinn. Jinn in the sense that is a plasma life form. Don't mix up with with the literature. Generically, they are plasma life form. So you have an ordinary matter life form, and there is a dark plasma life form which is integrated with your body. Now, why clairvoyants can see the dark plasma life form is because they are able to shift their ordinary sight to the dark side. They can shift the sensory systems back and forth between the dark plasma body and the ordinary matter body. When they use the dark plasma body, they can see very, very clearly in full brilliance. It's not like we just see bits and pieces. They can see the whole thing. And if the dark plasma body wants to talk to you, dark plasma life form wants to talk to you, it can talk to you through your dark plasma body, which is coupled to your body. So it can send messages, electromagnetic waves. Okay, that is only one form of communication. Okay,
Yeah.
you can send it to your dark plasma body. Your dark plasma body, ordinary matter body, and then you may get you may get a muddled sort of impression because it's passing through your brain and everything, and so the so it seems a bit mythical and so on and so forth. But I've laid down. I've got a paper called a possible dark plasma sheet, anchored to the bioelectric field. So the dark plasma sheet, okay, which is the first layer of the dark plasma body. I mean, there are various dark plasma bodies. All these dark plasma bodies can actually move around independently of the ordinary matter body. Okay, but generally they are not manifest, even in their own sectors, even in the dark sectors, they are not there. The reason is because in this multiverse, right, you may have an excitation, but the manifestation is in different parts of the multiverse. So your ordinary matter body and your immediate dark plasma body is attached to your body. Now, this immediate dark plasma body cannot separate from your body, unlike the other dark plasma bodies. And but using this dark plasma sheet, I call it dark plasma sheet because it cannot independently move from your ordinary matter body. Any passing dark plasma entity can communicate with that, with that, with the dark plasma sheet. Yeah.
Could another mechanism be that obviously our brains, there's electromagnetic fields that are involved when it comes to thoughts and things like this. Could these entities, dark plasma beings or entities, interact or affect the electromagnetic waves of the brain as well? Is that a possibility? And then this obviously, because there's people that have these experiences sometimes experience intense fear. And we know EM fields, for example, they can create paranoia, agitation, fear in all of these states. So could that be a mechanism as well that they use
Yeah,
as a
sure,
channel
sure.
to communicate?
Yeah. But it's important to separate the ordinary electromagnetism from the dark electromagnetism.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why I say 90% of the time is ordinary electromagnetism. Electromagnetic fields can affect your emotions. Okay, it can make you go crazy or it can make you be happy or whatever, it can. and also through the bioelectric, we have a bioelectric field, an ordinary bioelectric field, not a dark electric field.
Mhm.
So on top of this, there's another dark electromagnetic field. Okay, so in terms of recurrent conversations and prolonged conversations with the dark plasma entity, right? Most probably is the dark plasma body. It's not just the ordinary matter body. But if it's just diffuse emotions and things like that, yeah, it is most probably the ordinary electromagnetic bodies. Now, I don't know whether you've heard of the Hogan twins or not. The Hogan twins.
No.
The Hogan twins is a medical case some time ago where there were two children, okay, K and T, okay, who shared the same, who have two different bodies and sensory systems, but they share the same brain. Okay, and whatever K sees, T can also see. Whatever T sees, K can see. So why I bring up this example is when you talk about the dark plasma sheet being attached to your ordinary matter body, right? Both can see each other's environment through the sensory systems of the other body. No, just
So
like
there
this.
seems to be this sheathing, this type of dark plasma sheathing every human. Essentially, I think that's what you're saying
Yeah.
that we have,
Yeah.
and it's that sheathing that these entities can interact with, and
Yeah.
then that eventually manifests down to us in this sort of conscious
Yeah.
state.
So how it interacts is a bit complicated. Is a bit complicated. There are various ways. What I already mentioned, like kinetic mixing and collisional ionization and fifth fundamental force. But additionally, there's other ways. Basically, quantum interactions, which because they are actually molecules in your body that can actually interact in terms of they have when there's quantum coherence, right? They can actually the consciousness can actually be spread into like the K and the T and the Hogan twins, right? They are there's two separate body and the personalities are very different. But whatever K sees, T also can see. When T eats something, the K can taste the food of the T, of what T is eating. So I'm just giving an example of how the dark plasma body or sheet interacts with the ordinary plasma sheet. It's like this twins, and how they interact, we are still working on it, but there are many things that I've already written down on the possible pathways of how the two different, one is ordinary matter, the other one is dark matter, right? So how the two actually interact. So the interactions are generally relating to quantum physics. It's not classical physics. Yeah. Because they are in two different sectors. One is an ordinary sector, the other one is a dark sector. So a dark plasma entity can actually convey the information to the dark plasma sheet. The dark plasma sheet, because it is coupled to the ordinary matter body, right? It can convey the information, but sometimes the information can be muddled up and so on and so forth. And that is why clairvoyants have a special ability, and there are very few. There are very few clairvoyants, but the clairvoyants are such that their brain have sort of like been modulated such that they can receive some of this communication from the dark sector. Yeah.
Very interesting, Jay. So just a couple of things you mentioned there earlier as well, like the multiverse thing. So within the Islamic text, there's this idea of one our visible universe being within the other, like a ring in the desert, and that being like a ring in the desert. And there seems to be at least 7, according to some narrations, if not multiple. Those are very.
But just let me tell you that this idea is prevalent in many religions. In Hinduism, it's very, very detailed. They call it the lokas. And then in Buddhism also, 2,000 years before that, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, they also have also spelled out very, very detailed maps of all these worlds within worlds.
This is very. I like the way you're integrating sort of modern scientific language with metaphysics, and very few people are doing that. To see the bridge and the links, and it's very fascinating. But what I want to get your thoughts on now is you've obviously, I think, recently been looking into the whole UFO phenomena. I've seen a video that you
No,
produced
I've
on it
looked
as
at the
well.
UFO thing. No, I've looked at the UFO thing since 2005.
Oh
Actually,
wow. Okay.
it's not,
Okay. So it's not new. It's not new. Not new at all.
yeah,
Okay. Because there are a lot of stuff you've done on it. I think you've written on it as well, and you've got videos on your channel on it on the
yeah.
topic. What for you when you were studying the whole UFO UAP phenomena? What led you to the conclusion, looking at the data that we have, that this is related to what you've been referring to as, sentient dark plasma entities?
Yeah, so basically, the prevalent hypothesis is that this is an extraterrestrial phenomena.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, the extraterrestrial hypothesis has got many problems. First of all, the travel problems. How do you travel from one star to another?
Mhm.
Okay. Number two is how do you there is a ROI problem, return on investment. Why would an advanced civilization from one side of a galaxy go to another side of a galaxy to sort of stop over on a speck of dust
Yeah.
of a civilization which is even less advanced than yours?
Yeah.
What is your return on investment? It doesn't make sense, right? And then you look at the messaging. The messaging is, oh, don't destroy the earth and blah blah blah. I mean, why would a distant civilization come to the speck of dust, in this solar system, and warn about not destroying your earth? Doesn't make sense. I mean, they've got their own earths and they've got their own planets and stars and all on the other side of the galaxy. Why they come all over to this side of the galaxy to tell one small little civilization whom they won't get any benefits from, and
Yeah.
which is totally bad example of a civilization, with all the wars and nonsense going on, right? Why would they come here and tell us that? So the messaging problem is also is problematic. Then you've got a paranormal issue. So because they say the body moves out of the bedroom and then goes to it sort of transmits to the spacecraft. Now the question is what body are you talking about? Are you talking about the physical body or the subtle body or the dark plasma body? So all this tells you that the extraterrestrial hypothesis is too simplistic. It doesn't work. So my hypothesis, I call it the interterrestrial hypothesis, because if Earth is nested within many different Earths, bigger and bigger Earths, right? Bigger and bigger plasma spheres, and which have their own civilizations, most of the UFOs and of the UAP and the aliens that you meet are going to be from a parent universe, which is just next door only. They don't have, first of all, they don't have to travel. There's no such thing as return on investment. There's not, because there's no cost to it. And in terms of messaging, it makes complete sense because they are worried that you are going to destroy the earth to which they are coupled to. They are coupled to our earth. That is why they're so worried about us destroying our earth.
That's
And
very
in terms of the paranormal, it explains straight away is if you got dark plasma bodies that can separate from the ordinary matter body, that explains all the paranormal activities. So my hypothesis is not the extraterrestrial, but the interterrestrial aliens hypothesis.
Mhm.
You see?
So, Jay,
So
I just want to ask you a question on that related to what you just said, that the messaging, about don't destroy the earth, which comes across in many of these cases, is linked to is relevant because our world is attached to their world, and what we do here impacts there. That brings me to another question. There's a very clear link based on the data that there's a link between UFOs or UAPs and nuclear facilities or nuclear, nukes going off, etc. So in the 40s, when they were testing nukes, they started to see a lot of UFOs, UAPs. A lot of UFOs, UAPs are seen around these nuclear facilities, messing around with the electronics, switching things off, switching things on. Um, so I guess the question here is naturally, does nuclear energy, fission, fusion, either or, have an impact on a subtle plasma-based life form? What's your
yeah,
thoughts on that?
I mean, you talk about collisional ionization, which I talked about before, which is basically particles colliding with dark matter particles colliding with ordinary matter particles. The ordinary particles, which are shot out at very high energetic speeds, they're going to collide with the dark matter particles. If I'm a dark plasma scientist, right, I'm going to see that. I'm going to see dark plasma generated by your ordinary plasma. You see?
Mhm.
and is the interaction is most of the time is with our parent universe lah, which is a mirror which is a mirror universe, right? Which we are inside of. So when we blast our nuclear bombs or whatever, the Earth is will be smaller than the actually the that particular second Earth, right? Has got a radius of 70,000 kilometers. This is our Earth has got a radius of 6,000 kilometers. Okay, that Earth has so it's so much bigger. So if nuclear, you do a nuclear bomb or whatever, they can kind of see it, but it's just a tiny patch on their screen. But most of these plasma life forms are actually around um, the ones that are the parent universe are actually the dark Earth, which is the immediate dark Earth lah. Okay, most of the high density plasma life forms are actually in the CTS region. I call it the CTS region, which is the crust of the Earth, and the lower atmospheres, the stratosphere and the troposphere. That's where most of the UFO sightings occur anyway.
So as far as specifically on the nuclear energy and its impact, so say on plasma, and the electromagnetic sort of fields of plasma, would it have a detrimental effect on like a nuclear explosion on Earth, for example, in our sphere or our dimension or our world? Would it have a direct bearing negative effect on their world?
Yeah.
And if so,
yeah.
that makes
It has a negative bearing, but when you look at their whole environment, it's a very big globe, which is much larger than the rocky Earth that we're in. So
Mhm.
even when there's a nuclear explosion, it's a very small thing based on their globe, it's a very small thing, but most of
Mhm.
them live around that concentrated
Mhm.
area. Most
Right.
of the high density plasma life form live around that
Mhm.
lower atmosphere and the crust. So when there is a new nuclear bomb, right? Nuclear bombs are normally stratosphere and or underground or whatever, right? So it is within the area. So I mean, this is a bit of a speculation, but yeah, I mean they could be concerned, and that is why they are giving out the messages,
Mhm.
not to destroy the earth and blah blah blah. That makes
Mhm.
more sense than an extraterrestrial from another galaxy coming here and telling us the same thing,
Yeah.
which doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating. There's so many more questions to ask. I guess the other thing I wanted to quickly ask you is what would obviously every life form requires sustenance or a energy source. What would such entities or beings, what would their energy source or food, if you like, be?
Yeah. So I've explained this in a lot of detail, even 20 years ago, but in much more technical detail in my paper on plasma life forms, a biological blueprint. They also metabolize, energy and so forth. So what happens is these vortices, right? Vortices, they absorb energetic particles. It goes into their body, the energy is extracted, and most of the vortexes are double vortex systems. So they go in, the energy is absorbed, the discharge particles are released on the other side of the vortex, on the other end of the vortex. Okay, this is a double vortex system. So this energy circulates around the plasma body and sort of gives all the different other parts of the body, the energy, and the energy that is not used will be stored in capacitors, because plasma has got double layers. These double layers actually can act as capacitors. That means you want energy, you can release from the energy. Capacitors are like batteries. So you got negative particles being absorbed, you got positive particles being absorbed, and then it is used in some parts of the body, but the extra energy is stored in capacitors. And this is actually mentioned in Qigong literature. Qigong literature in Taoism, right? They actually explain about the capacitors and how the capacitors store energy and so on and so forth. So most of the Qigong practitioners, they look at the sun. They look at the sun, and then they sort of like they are absorbing energy. Right? What kind of energy are they absorbing? They're not absorbing just ordinary energy, because dark matter is actually produced in the sun too. There are certain types of dark matter, and including dark photons, which can be manufactured by the sun. So beside the visible sun, there is another sun which has got a dark solar wind. The dark solar wind has got all these particles coming. So when Qigong practitioners, when they do the Qigong, right, they're actually absorbing these dark matter particles too. And these dark matter particles go through the vortexes in the bodies, right? The chakras and all, right? It goes into the body, and the extra energy is actually stored in the chakra. So there is absorption, there is excretion, okay? There is storage for future use. Okay, so that's all metabolic activities. I outline all the metabolic activities of a plasma life form. So
Very
you have to think of a plasma life form as I mean, we have to use basic biology, you know, you can actually use basic biology to explain. It is a life form. You have to underline the word life form. So because traditionally we look at it as spiritual beings, blah blah blah, but actually since they are plasma, they spontaneously emit photons. Okay, they can go up to very high energy levels or come down. They can size shift. Okay, they can shape shift. Okay, they can communicate somewhat with your dark plasma sheet, but not very much. It's very little. So they also have coronas, just like the sun. The coronas in their bodies, they have granulation, just like the surface of the sun. They have spicules. That means there's sort of like wavy thing, in the bodies, and they got spicules. These are all characteristic signature features of plasma bodies in the laboratory. These are all. So when if a plasma scientist sees that metaphysical entity, right, you will still straight away assume it must be
Yes.
made of plasma.
Yeah. It boils down to the worldview and the way people are looking at and interpreting this thing. So, would you say electricity then? Like, you see in certain paranormal situations where electrical devices are drained just prior to a manifestation or something, and the sort of general theory is amongst these paranormal investigators that these entities are absorbing energy from these devices to then manifest. Is there
Okay.
some truth to this?
Okay, I've written about this, and basically in 2005 actually, and it is they are misinterpreting it lah. It looks like is absorbing, but actually they're misinterpreting.
Okay.
What happens is during the collisional ionization, that means when the ordinary dark matter particles are colliding with ordinary matter particles, right? Um, ordinary plasma is generated. Now imagine, so these kinds of things happen. I mean, in electrical installation, the air in the installation is already slightly ionized. It's ionized at a higher. What does ionized mean? Ionized means some of the electrons have already left the atoms. Because in an electrical installation, right, some of the air around the electrical installations, right, they would be slightly more ionized than, let's say, the everyday atmosphere when you come out of the installation. Similarly, maybe in nuclear installations also, you may have electrical installations. The air is slightly more ionized than ordinary air. And another place that is slightly more ionized is on mountain tops. As you go higher and higher, the air also becomes slightly more ionized.
Wow.
Now, when the ordinary matter air is slightly more ionized, it is able to sustain ordinary plasma slightly longer.
Right.
So when collisional ionization occurs, right, when collisional ionization occurs, it is sustained for a longer period because ionized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The ordinary, if the collisional organization occurs in, let's say, on the streets or whatever, in just an open environment, it's going to dissipate very fast. But ordinary plasma in an electrical installation in an environment which is slightly more ionized is going to sustain the ordinary plasma a little longer. So when you see it, it's going to last. You may be able to see it. I mean, if it's a normal environment, right, it just disappears completely, right? It's invisible. But in the electrical installation, that's why you see ghosts. I mean, so-called ghosts in the electrical installations and all these metaphysical entities. And where else do you see them? You see them on mountaintops.
Yes.
The ionization level is lower.
I was just thinking of that. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So that means higher ionization environments are going to be hotspots, you can say, where these entities can be found. And so, what can you just list a few places on Earth that are more highly ionized? Mountaintops is one. Any other areas or locations you can expect?
Mountaintops and electrical installations. Besides that, because this I have to explain something else. But okay, so basically you've got your meridians and you've got your vortexes in your body. The Earth itself is a plasma sphere.
Mhm.
So the Earth itself has got meridians and got vortexes. These vortexes, right, or vortices,
Mhm.
may have been generally recognized as sacred sites.
Like ley lines and things, where ley lines
Yeah,
cross
so
and
you got
sacred
the
sites.
ley
Okay.
lines are actually meridians. So
Uh,
they're actually plasma filaments. The vortexes are actually plasma vortexes, but
very
dark
interesting.
plasma vortexes. Now, those
Right.
dark plasma vortexes, when they generate the ordinary plasma through the collisional ionization, this ordinary plasma is not hot plasma, it's not thermal plasma. It's what we call a non-thermal plasma. It's actually cold plasma. Cold
Okay.
plasma, when you go to a hospital, right? Some hospitals use cold plasma for healing. And that is why when you go to the sacred sites, it may be that people are healed. It's
Right.
because of the cold plasma being generated through the collisional ionization. You see? So over there, you may find maybe entities there which are. I mean, if it's a sacred site, then of course it's a more healing is a healing place lah. But if, for electrical installations and for uh, may have other types of entities, okay, and then mountaintops we do not know what. I mean, it could be a mixture, but whatever it is a physical thing. I mean, it's just that the place is more ionized,
Mhm.
or all these meridians and vortexes are places in the dark plasma sphere which has a higher density of dark plasma particles. What is the implication? If there are more dark plasma particles, there are going to be more collisions with ordinary matter particles. If there are
Mm.
more collisions, there's going to be more ordinary plasma, ordinary closed plasma, which can be healing. But it depends on what's actually happening. But generally, this is solar. Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. This has been so, I've learned so much today, Jay. Thank you so much. It's really connected so many dots for me, which I hadn't been able to do before. Before we wrap up, Jay, obviously, we need to do a few more of these in the future. Whenever you have time, we'll arrange more because I know there's so much knowledge you have about this subject, which we haven't done justice to in this, hour, 40 minutes. But we're going to do more episodes hopefully in the future. But where can people find your work? Those that are interested in plasma physics and dark plasma and everything. Obviously, I'll link your work in our description, your books. You sent me some of the
Yeah.
resources in the description. But
Yeah.
where else can they find you?
Yeah. So I've already given you the links on
Yes.
academia.edu, which I'll highly recommend for those who are more scientifically based. Okay, because it's a lot of the papers are. I mean, there's quite a number of papers which are quite technical. Okay,
Mhm.
but nevertheless, is the latest of my writings lah. So I'll recommend that. Number two is my YouTube channel, which I've
Yeah.
also given the link. Okay,
Yes.
YouTube channel are for everybody, especially the short videos. The short
Yes.
explainer videos are quite simple to understand. The deep dives are maybe a bit more difficult, but the videos, I mean, anybody can go through it and
Yeah.
understand most of it, you know.
Yeah,
And
the
these are the
videos are
two main
brilliant.
places.
The videos are
Yeah.
excellent. So I really encourage everyone that's interested to watch those videos because they you've done them in a way which is so easy to access for the layperson, that doesn't have a background in this, and it gives you the overall picture. And then if you're interested,
Mm.
you could do the deep dives on academia, edu, etc. But yeah, thank you so much, Jay. This has been
No
phenomenal.
worries.
Anything
Yeah.
else? Anything else you want to mention before we wrap up today?
So basically, these are the two main areas. But of course, if you go to the internet and just put my name there, you'll see so many other links because I've been writing for the past 20 years. So you've got all various websites, which just pop out the video. And I've got books also. I've got 3 books on Amazon.com.
Mhm.
But that was 20 years ago. It's quite detailed for a normal person. It's quite detailed, but the ones in academia.edu will be much more recent. The recent experimental data. That's what the academia.edu will have. But the first book, Our Invisible Bodies, uh, delves into the metaphysical a little bit more. And the second book, Between the Moon and the Earth, I'm actually explaining what between the moon and the earth means is the plasma sphere. Okay, the Earth's plasma sphere which goes up to the moon. Okay, so that is another one that you can read. These 2 books have got more metaphysical literature in it. Whereas the papers in the academia.edu are all sort of like scientific. So I don't really mention metaphysical stuff in. So if you want the relationship between metaphysical literature and science, those two books are better.
Yeah.
But
And you
then
also,
after that, when you graduate, of course, you go to the technical ones.
yeah, and you also have a specific paper on this channel. A lot of people are interested in the Jinn phenomena and the unseen and the UFO stuff. So you have a
Yeah.
paper on Jinn ghosts and plasma, dark plasma as well, specifically.
So I've got a paper on plasma phenomena in anecdotal religious literature, which you actually linked right in your
Yeah.
one of your videos. I think that's the main one, but off and on I've uh, sort of like reference it. But my previous articles, and even in those two books I mentioned, I actually talk a little bit more about it. That was like 20
Perfect.
years ago. You see, when I started, right, is I was sort of linking it up with metaphysical literature first in order to respect those metaphysicists who actually did some research on this. But as I move on, right, since 2009, right, since I started since the first after the first journal paper that I published, I became a little bit more, less and less metaphysical literature and more direct science. So for those people who like metaphysical things, then they go to the older stuff. Those people who want to come to the technical scientific part, they go to the later scientific papers. Yeah.
Yeah, Jay, one thing I love about your work, and like we mentioned already, is that you're someone that understands that if we are to understand these aspects of reality, it's not going to happen through the one lens, like just the lens of science, or just the lens of traditional metaphysics, or just the lens of philosophy. You have to bring all of these different domains together, and then study it holistically. And that's when you start to see what's really going on. And that's very commendable, because a lot of people today in the modern sort of secular world, we only see science as the only way to truth, and everything else is, garbage. But in reality, it's bringing everything together that gives you the complete picture, as compared to just sticking to just science alone. So I really appreciate that about your work, because you do delve into the metaphysics, you do delve into the philosophy, you apply critical thinking and logic to your discussions, you're connecting dots and points. It's absolutely phenomenal. And unfortunately, you don't see much of that today. But once again, thank you so much. This has been extremely enlightening. We'll definitely do many more. I'm going to invite you to our X space as well whenever you have time. We do spaces on X, on Twitter, and we have a huge audience there that comes every Friday. So whenever you can make some time, we'll arrange that as well, because I think your work needs to be put out to many more people so they can appreciate the research that's been done. But yeah, thank you so much, Jay. Have
Thanks
a
for
good day.
having me, and I think I had a great conversation. I think the questions that you were asking were definitely the right questions, and which, when I say that, I mean when I'm talking to a lot of other people, especially the public, they really they haven't really connected everything, but you seem to have connected a few things here and there. So I think that the questions are quite commendable, and I hope to discuss more about all this in
Thank
later
you.
sessions.
Just
Thanks a lot.
trying to do the best I can. But thank you so much, Jay. Thank you for the kind words, and we'll be in touch very soon to carry on these discussions. Take
Okay.
care. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.